Noxious versus CycloneGG Game 3 coming your way. It was a pretty good performance from Cyclone in Game 1, really centered around Eribiiax's hell. Game 2 was basically all Noxious from the beginning, so Game 3 should be a pretty good one.
Might be a happy medium between the two teams, in fact, considering how one-sided it's been so far, that I'm kind of expecting both of them, now that they're a little bit more familiar with what to expect from each other, that they might be able to handle a little bit better from both sides.
Now remember, the way that this postseason and the lead up to DreamHack works on the console side, if you're first place, aka Rival or Astral Authority, then you are already guaranteed to DreamHack. They're good. But the top two, the second team in each region on the Xbox is coming to the placement rounds to compete up against the top region, or the top team from each PS4 region. The other two spots are meeting at DreamHack Atlanta. So the second place is absolutely critical. It's basically a two-team race between Noxious and Cyclone, and so this game is absolutely critical for who will come to the placement rounds. As we get into it, Cyclone is the first pick this time around. Noxious has been first pick the last two games, and Freya, Chernobog banned away. Athena, Bakasura, it's been the same bans every game except Cyclone this time get their first pick selection, and because Ratatoskr hasn't been picked at all, they first pick it this time around.
There's a couple of pretty hot choices still on the board. There's the Terra that is so actively sought out quite often here in Europe, at least. I'd say even a decent amount over there in North America as well.
Yeah.
But the Outwash run back for Noxious, and for good reason. And when you have a performance like that with Watson, I don't see a reason to not want to run it again with the Outwash.
I agree. No Baron is noteworthy, but Baron 0-2 so far, so I guess that's no real surprise. As Achilles going to be locked in this time for Cyclone, that I imagine would be Achilles solo, though it could be Ratatoskr solo still. We've seen a little bit more of that as Wukong 2-0 so far in this set, and so Noxious will take it for themselves.
Curious if we're going to see any Thanatos or Ao Kuang in a response towards this Khepri. I think that both of those gods could also fare fairly well. I guess the Ratatoskr and Achilles kind of just meeting pressure with pressure in the early game. Right now, I think things definitely favor Cyclone. The question is whether or not they're going to choose to actively try and abuse that aspect.
No Pele pick after how dominant Mango was in that game. They wait on it and it gets banned away. Are you surprised? Because I am.
I am, but maybe it was the Ratatoskr that changed his mind at the last minute there.
Maybe.
Ratatoskr possibly faring a little bit better up against the Pele, and Noxious not feeling as confident in that Pele would bring a lot of counter aggression for it.
Soul in the mid lane now for Cyclone, at least we imagine, though we'll see with this final selection, which is likely to be a Hunter, and indeed it is. It's Ho Yi in the matchup there up against the Hachiman. No Rom this time. Davies been Rom both games leading up to this, so switches it up a little bit, and I think that's probably the right call. The Rom, if you're not hitting the snipes, then there's other gods that hit auto attacks well, and that was kind of the case there for Davey.
Game 1 was definitely a lot more finesse from Davey in terms of the Astral Barrage connecting, but Game 2 definitely struggled quite a bit to make the same level of connection, so the Ho Yi will probably fare a lot better. Not only that, it provides some great space control that I think Cyclone was kind of lacking.
That's a good point. They could use some AoE, and Ho Yi provides that, and do you think that Ho Yi pick is what'll swing you over to the CycloneGG side? Make sure you get your vote in on the Mixer chat, or will Noxious be able to win 2 in a row? And honestly, it just comes down to me here, Taco. Opwash again. Do they have what it takes from the Cyclone draft to really get on top of this Opwash is the question. Ratatoskr does that well. Achilles does that well. Ho Yi does that pretty well. Even Soul can have a pretty good matchup there because of the slow immunity on the 3, lets you kind of surge forward even through Empty the Crypts. So I don't know. I think I like Cyclone's draft quite a bit.
I'm looking entirely at NeiI for handling this Outwash. At least for the first 15 minutes, that is all NeiI's department there, with that through the Cosmos of the Ratatoskr will be the best way to try and put Watson behind, because it's the easiest setup imaginable for Eribiiax. Off the Supernova, off the Stellar Burst, doesn't really matter which he chooses to go for. Just bring Watson down early on, and the team will reap the benefits later on.
Watson definitely a key factor, but maybe the burst damage. Look, Opwash does a ton of burst, but it's predictable burst. I mean, he needs to go through steps in order to kill you from a high health percentage. You got to get hit by the 1, potentially sometimes even the 3, and then the 2, which has the detonation time. that should, in theory, be plenty of time for Switch to throw Scarab's Blessing on a priority target.
And that could also be another problem here, though, for Noxious running this Outwash, is that Switch now has a chance to save the life of somebody from Cyclone. Whoever it is that's eating the most of that Outwash damage. And it's not even just the Outwash either. It could be Mango or Hydro. It doesn't really matter, but Scarab's Blessing can never be overlooked.
Such a good ability, and really does put you in a spot where you can have characters like Achilles and like Ratatoskr be very aggressive. Cyclone still has the majority of the fans in chat on their side. They won the poll after game 1, of course, but this one a little bit closer than it was after game 2. Are you a fan of, so Soul in the mid lane has basically two different build paths. It's the auto attack style and the burst style. Which do you think is better right now? For
mid lane, not a Hunter's Blessing Soul, personally.
Really?
I think that he might have, while you can get a lot of benefits off the Hunter's Blessing, it's a pretty heavy commitment from the mid lane position to work on those 75 stacks. And not only that, but Soul in general, by going for the Hunter's Blessing, it does kind of force Eribiiax into more of the attack-based style. Otherwise, why go for the Hunter's Blessing to begin with? And that could possibly delay some of the damage from Cyclone's end of things. And I think that damage was definitely something that they struggle with in game 2.
I agree with you. I do think that you can go Hunter's Blessing and still build Bancrofts into, I don't know, Spear of Desolation or something like that, that gives you a little bit more burst power that's less focused on the auto attacks. Soul already gets natural attack speed from her passive, and so the Hunter's Blessing just kind of adds into that and doesn't take away too much. But I think that I've really been converted into the auto attack Soul build, even in mid lane, because the rings are really, really potent right now. Demonic Grip, after the recent buff, well, not even that recent, but Demonic Grip feels pretty good and does a ton of damage whenever you can stack those up. The Hastened Ring is good. The Telkine's Ring is good. I feel like auto attack Soul might be the way to go, and that might be the first time I've said that in a long time.
I'm fine with that. It's just, I don't think that the Hunter's Blessing is really a necessity here. If anything, I would have probably preferred to see Eribiiax rush the Bancrofts. A little bit more risk involved, but a lot more damage to boot.
You do end up overcapping your attack speed a lot of the time, or getting pretty darn close to it if you go triple ring between Demonic, Telkines, and Hastened. With Hunter's Blessing, you're at like 2.4 or something like that. So you're pretty close. So maybe without the Hunter's Blessing, you can have a bit of a smoother curve. Something certainly worth trying out. So Mango's trying to get some pressure on this left-hand side. Switch didn't realize it was going on. He has the shell, but pulled back in with Wind Siphon. Still an early game Susano, and that's not going to do a whole lot of damage. But Eribiiax is here with a solid Stellar Burst. Hydro's got to use the Purification Bead. Xuen has been left for dead, potentially, but a perfectly timed double dash, and Shell gets him out of that pit, but a great ricochet. Hydro can't quite get the distance away, doesn't get abducted, but Xuen nearly falls. Davey doesn't want to let him go.
Davey doesn't have anybody else that he could possibly try and target out. That is until NeiI makes the rotation on the backside. Where the hell did this Ratatoskr come from out of nowhere?
Idea. Where did he come from is right. I mean, he must have looped all the way up above red. It's a first blood for Cyclone, and a poorly timed invade, it feels like, there from Noxious.
NeiI could not have had better timing, though, on his arrival, because I was so certain that everybody from Noxious was going to be able to escape from that failed purple buff invade, and yet NeiI, right when his team needed him most to find the first blood, manages to wrap around just in time. And not only that, but he stripped away half of Noxious's dual lane farm in the process. So now that's going to put Reform Mango just a little bit further behind, and a Ratatoskr with a full acorn before the 5-minute mark. There is no chance that Watson can feel very safe in the mid lane right now. Probably going to have to play off of his tower line for the next few minutes or so until he knows that Mango is going to be able to help with any sort of counter initiation.
This is the first time the solo lane has been Warrior versus Warrior. It's been a lot of Baron versus Wukong thus far. Wukong, is this just a European console league pick, or is this something that you expect to see more of?
I think we can expect to see a lot more of Wukong, and maybe not over the online phases, but I think once land starts coming around the corner, we might start seeing Wukong creep up more and more in our sights. NeiI, though, will be forced out of his Through the Cosmos. Had that blue buff in his sights, but Mango and Gnome are going to be able to defend that one.
Does force out the Somersault Cloud. NeiI not using that Through the Cosmos as a defensive-only tool. Able to get some good stuff out of it. Chronic's got to use Fatal Strike to get away from the perfect body block there from Xuen. So good rotation over by Xuen into the solo lane. Despite Noxious being 1-1 so far in this set, I think Xuen's been impressive.
Xuen's been putting in some killer work lately, especially on that Terra. It feels like a lot of his wall placements are really well thought out. That's the big swing for me a lot of times. Eribiiax under pressure now in the mid lane, but Watson without the necessary mana to follow that up any further. Xuen's just going to help him back right on out of there.
Davey commits the Sunbreaker to secure purple, but an ultimate for a buff in the early game. Definitely a worthwhile trade. Xuen this time can't find the stun. Davey outranges it by just a step. So Cyclone's dual lane able to get a clean invade off on that left side of the map. Davey with a slight lead right now over the opposition in Hydro. He's got about 75 XP per minute above him. So that'll translate, if he's able to keep that pace, that'll translate to even more than a 1-level lead fairly quickly.
That's the intent, but the question is, can he keep it going? It's not an easy thing to constantly keep that experience stacking up so heavily, but ChronicThe Bros also wishes he was a little bit closer to his side of the map here, trying to buy some time.
No
We'll find the
way.
execution. That is the worst case scenario for Noxious in a 2v1 situation. The ChronicThe Bros manages to make a play out of nothing.
I love that he goes for the execute there. Even with Gnome not quite in execute threshold, knowing that there was going to be a little bit more damage coming from minions or whatever, you're not living with by Fatal Striking away in that spot, so just go for the play. He does, and it translates into a tier 1 tower because of Eribiiax's rotation. And really, I mean, we could call a spade a spade. Mango doesn't hit a thing on that gank, and that's why Gnome ends up falling.
He needed one ability, and ChronicThe Bros would have died long before he could have had that happen. But now, Crips are going to be unleashed here in the mid lane. Cyclone still looking for even more blood, and they're going to find it onto Watson. Acorn Blast onto Xuen now from NeiI, but no further mana. Needed the Flurry of Acorns to finish that one off. Now, Eribiiax trying to slow down Gnome and peel for NeiI.
But Switch has the ultimate, and now Gnome has killed himself going for that kill. Does trade back onto Eribiiax via Mango, but Noxious seem to be falling apart a little bit. NeiI's looked great so far on this Ratatoskr. I love that angle that he used for Through the Cosmos there. I mean, that is... Watson's expecting to get rat ulted, sure, but he's probably watching from the sides or from the enemy side of the map, not from his own speed buff. Really good gank from NeiI.
The fact that NeiI has been able to continuously invade against Mango also, it just goes to show how much pressure this Ratatoskr can bring. I don't believe that he actually managed to steal away Mango's speed buff. It does look like Mango managed to collect that one himself. It's just the fact that NeiI is constantly looking to pressure out Mango inside of his own jungle. He's not letting the Susano have any room to breathe, and rightfully so. As a Ratatoskr, this is your most abusable period, is during the laning phase, right, when you know that members from Noxious are going to have to be there to collect farm. Especially
up against Susano, who is one of the slower starters in the jungle. His mid to late game makes it worth the payoff in most instances, but man, level 4 Susano is about as weak as you can feel as an assassin. Really good abduct from Switch to stop Eribiiax from getting rooted. Actually is enough to send Xuen packing.
T1 tower, though, getting rather low here for Cyclone. Doesn't look like Eribiiax has been as attentive towards preventing creeps from pushing into the tower as he probably should have been. Hydro also getting the better end of Davey now. Davey was looking to play super aggressive early on. ChronicThe Bros not letting Reform Mango have any chances. He will confirm his own speed buff, but at the cost of his own life.
Watson drops the ultimate. Now Chronic is in some danger. No Fatal Strike for him this time around, and gotta imagine no way he's able to get out of this. No, of course, Switch is there with a Scarab's Blessing. It's just a moment too early, and Chronic will fall because of it. Good idea from Switch, was just a hair too early.
Was expecting Noxious to commit a little bit harder there, especially since ChronicThe Bros ran in so awkwardly. It did not look like Noxious were aware that Switch was even in the area.
Yeah.
They just didn't seem interested in aggressing into Chronic, trying to figure out what the situation was first.
Well, that patience, or extreme patience, pays off for Noxious in the end. Look at this, Noxious gonna try and sneak away at gold. Switch and Davey are on the way, but they've got to get on the horse. They want to get there in time. Gold Fury getting lower. Solar Flare, not quite in time. Noxious get the Gold Fury, and a much, much needed objective for this team. Cyclone does get Pyro on the other side of the map, but man, Noxious needed something to go their way, and that's exactly what the doctor ordered.
But Hydro will be forced to just sit and watch as Davey and Switch make quick work of that purple buff. They might have gotten the Gold Fury, but they can't protect their jungle immediately after, especially when everybody from Noxious more interested in backing. They were rather low after committing onto that Gold Fury. And Hydro will be able to avoid the Solar Flare route. Second time around, as Davey's still trying to line up a bounce. This is the obvious I'm looking for the bounce angle Huyi stance.
The staring at a wall and like shifting left and right a little bit. Yeah, that's a classic. Mango again going mano-a-mano up against Chronic on this right-hand side. Execute was just a little bit early from Chronic, and Gnome might be able to confirm this one before anyone's able to get in range. Chronic looking to kill Mango, but Mango keeping his distance nicely, punishing the over-aggressive solo laner on that right side. Supernova comes down and does good damage to Xuen. Xuen falls to NeiI's damage alongside Davey, and Switches here, has that Scarab's Blessing available. Well-timed yet again, and Davey out of there. Watson might not be so lucky.
Watson was hoping that Davey would have stayed standing on top of those corpses, detonates the explosion anyway, but didn't realize that Davey was already out of there. It's the least that Watson could have tried for, though. You're pretty much dead by rights in that sort of situation. You know that Cyclone is closing in on you. Try to find anything you can in that circumstance. Unfortunately, it just didn't end up working out in his favor.
Switch has had a great game so far in this Khepri, even though there's been a couple revives that didn't quite pan out. He's also had so many that, yes, they don't get the actual revive animation, but he's saving his carry's life. Right there is the perfect example. Davey doesn't go to 0, but he's only able to stay up because of Switch's ultimate.
I also don't feel like there's as much synergy between the Susano Puch like there was in the previous match for Watson. Had a little bit of an easier time, I think, alongside of the Pele because it was a more notable setup combination between the two of them. And Mango, since NeiI has done such a great job stripping away his jungle early on, putting the Susano behind, Mango just hasn't really had much of an opportunity to line up with Watson. He spent more time just looking to make up for the farm, I think, leeching experience from solo and mid, and even then he's still trailing behind NeiI just a little bit too much to feel safe combining any part of his kit, in fact, with Watson.
Eribiiax has also been able to make not just any impact, but a big one so far in this game. He's second in the player damage so far, and you compare that to the game he had with the Isis last time around, where he was below the supports past this point. I mean, that's a huge difference coming out of your mid laner.
Davey, though, in a lot of trouble here. Forced to dive bomb over the wall, but it won't stop the mounted archer from coming through. Beautiful Scarab's Blessing, though, going to save his life.
Switch again comes up big. Watson drops the ultimate, but it doesn't really do a whole lot as NeiI is able to get the finishing touches onto Mango with the blink forward and the dash. That's 5-0 and 2 now for NeiI on this Ratatoskr. And it's already shaping up. If Cyclone win this game, it's going to be a tough MVP vote because Switch and NeiI both feel very deserving so far.
Switch's timing, though, on that Scarab's Blessing, it's getting better and better every time as well. As the game goes on, Switch is feeling things out a little bit better here, able to anticipate Noxious's aggression, so much so that he could save the life of his hunter in an instant like that. And Eribiiax will have aggro of this T2 tower. He's going to be forced to back away. This might be a little bit more than they could chew for right now. Cyclone, within reason, understanding that they can't force this T2 just yet, will end up backing off. But the Gold Fury is about to respawn in just another 30 seconds or so, and Cyclone, everything should be sent right now on setting up for that next Gold Fury.
Cyclone looking great this time around. Even the back timing is perfect. I mean, this puts them in great position to get total ward vision around this Gold Fury. Look at the inventories of CycloneGG right now. Everyone has a sentry ward, and the only person without a regular ward is Chronic because he already has the health chalice, so he doesn't have room in the inventory for it. They back, they get healthy, they get their wards, and this should be an immediate Gold Fury pull, if you ask me, from Eribiiax and the rest of Cyclone, because the back timings from Noxious, as good as Cyclone's were, equally bad. Everyone backs right on time for the Gold Fury to spawn, which means that Gnome is really the only one who even has a chance to try and steal this away. He's going to have to try, because it's getting to that desperation point. Gold Fury goes down, it's Cyclone's anyways! Switch in here trying to peel away Gnome. Fatal Strike doesn't really do too much there for Chronic, and he's isolated right now by this Empty the Crypts, but NeiI gonna join in, looking for Watson. Beads are good, and NeiI does fall switch. Can't get in range. Chronic will get rezzed, but Noxious still surging forward.
Perfect wind siphon there as well from Reform Mango to save the life of his mid laner. Watson loses the Purification Beads. ChronicThe Bros could be next to fall, and the Storm Kata will be enough, but Eribiiax with a quick stellar burst takes down Reform Mango in response. 4 members of Noxious still standing strong, though. They just lost the Gold Fury. This T1 tower in mid is at 10% health. Cyclone, there's no chance they could possibly try and defend this.
Just one auto does it for Hydro, so Tier 1 tower does go down, and now Noxious are transitioning over towards the Pyromancer. And with no ultimates up here for Cyclone, I don't know that they can really defend this.
It was just a forced fight from Cyclone, though. Noxious baited them in, and Cyclone took the bait. The whole hook, line, and sinker. They should have just disengaged after they found the Gold Fury. Now Eribiiax a little bit separated due to the root combination from Xuen, but won't be in any further danger. With ward vision in Cyclone's favor, Noxious don't really feel too comfortable with pulling this Pyromancer. Neither does Davey, for good reason, should back off here.
Goes back to base. So Cyclone get their first Gold Fury of the game. Remember, first Gold Fury actually went to Noxious in a much-needed play by them. Looks like they just fed Chronic and the rest of Cyclone another 50 gold, knowing there's a sentry ward there and still placing down a regular. But a good fight from Noxious anyways, and one that they desperately needed. What went wrong there for Cyclone that they lost that fight so easily?
They just got split apart too quickly. Davey, Eribiiax, and Switch were all poised just a little bit closer to the red buff because they had full intentions of just disengaging after they got the objective. But NeiI and ChronicThe Bros a little bit too far up, get isolated thanks to a nice Unleash the Crypts by Watson, and that gave them all the time that they needed to finalize the kill into ChronicThe Bros. NeiI's through the Cosmos, just like what we're probably about to see here with Gnome, because he's going to get blown up by that stellar burst out of Eribiiax.
Oh, just misses getting up into the Somersault Cloud. Chronic able to get that finishing blow, but very nearly Gnome able to escape. That'll be Cyclone straight back towards the objective. Davey doing what Davey does, which is split push while his team is on the opposite side of the map. He's been a big fan of that play so far in this set. Pyromancer down. Cyclone gets it with no other contest from Noxious.
This is what I wanted to see from Davey. The unabashed recklessness.
Level 17, my guy. Yeah, of course. You're allowed to be at tier 2s when you're this far ahead. Drops the ultimate to clear the wave very quickly. Also keeps his Ricochet up and available for a potential stun. Davey trying to force that tier 1 or tier 2 and left down. And in fact, NeiI here to help him out. Hydro's got a beads and ult just to get away, and that is enough space created to make sure that tier 2 goes down. Good teamwork there by Cyclone.
I wish that Hydro would have just stepped into the Sunbreaker for an instant and then pulled back. That way it would have forced the T2 tower to focus Davey because he took damage from Davey.
Something that you can always do to try and... Obviously you don't want to be sitting in Sunbreaker the entire time, but a tick here or there will make sure that the enemy stays under fire from the tower. It's a common tactic in clearing waves early on to step into an ability that persists a little bit. Poseidon Whirlpool comes to mind first for me, where you want to take a tick to make sure your melee minions don't sit in it the entire time, make them run at the enemy god. Same logic can be applied there. Though I don't know if that would have been enough to save the tier 2 with NeiI's rotation anyways. Cyclone now up by a pretty considerable margin.
That was just strong recognition from NeiI, also realizing that Davey had Hydro confined to the T2 space entirely, so one through the Cosmos was all it took to force Hydro back, and looks like that's the same sort of space control that Cyclone are trying to make happen around this Fire Giant. They still have total ward vision over this FG for the most part. One ward in Noxious' favor underneath the choke point by that Pyromancer, but still, Cyclone willing to keep pushing forward into the likes of Noxious.
Watson loses his Book of the Dead shield and the Aegis, because Eribiiax just lets loose the ultimate and still did half his health. Love that decision. Just go for it. We were talking about his different options. It looks like Eribiiax has gone for more traditional burst, and it's paid off for him if you look at that combo. Shaman's Ring stacking up. Helps the autos and the burst damage, but a little bit more burst-oriented. Gold Fury about to spawn, so Cyclone pull back and try and set up.
But with no relics available for Watson, Noxious are going to have to pay a little bit more care towards their Outwash if they want to keep Watson alive throughout the entire duration of this next engagement. But Gold Fury, it's already about to fall. Somersault Cloud won't be able to land in time here as Gnome comes crashing down right after Cyclone secured the Gold Fury.
But Hydro is nowhere near this fight. Chronic is taking care of him all by himself. Zwen comes back and pops the Frenzy as Chronic is now completely isolated and still doing good work. Neil blinks forward and tries to join his teammate. Typhoon knocks up 2. Davey tries to get in there and will dash as well. But Neil still safe and sound. Switch still has Scarab's Blessing, but he's starting to get a couple too many targets. Eribiiax will take a target away from Noxious, though. Stellar Burst did a quarter of Watson's health. That burst damage really working for the Soul.
Good Aegis as well from Davey to try and avoid any after-the-fact burst damage. Outwash nearly getting off that corpse explosion that would have still done a decent amount of Davey's health, I think. It's just never got a chance to fully deploy it. And Noxious, now without their Outwash and without the Gold Fury, they expended so many teamfighting relics also in that last engage. And it just felt as though Noxious were kind of playing into the hands of Cyclone there. Cyclone already had the Gold Fury confirmed pretty much. But
yes.
By the time Noxious responded, that Gold Fury is done. I wanted to see Noxious back off there and instead maybe look to just try and siege down a T1 tower in the duo lane or in the solo lane. Somewhere else, but directly challenging Cyclone when they didn't have to really use anything for that Gold Fury, it just felt odd.
Gnome trying to contest Fire Giant. It's getting low all by himself. Gnome jumps in. Damage is there. Cyclone confirms the Fire Giant. Gnome now has to get on the run. Ricochet is waiting, and he can wait for the stun set up beautifully there by ChronicThe Bros. Eribiiax the one to get the last hit. As Hydro's on this left-hand side, he can't really join these fights. Only level 18. And there's not a lot of damage for him so far in this game. He'll get a tier 2, some much-needed gold for Noxious, but Cyclone in control.
Cyclone trying to pressure this right side Phoenix because they know it's a 4v5. It's just this might be a little bit too preemptive from the team. They don't have a creep wave that's going to come assist them anytime soon. ChronicThe Bros also forced to back just in case Hydro decided to stay split pushing there. And just like that, Cyclone will be prompted to back off from looking to seize that right-hand Phoenix. Instead, going to make quick work of this T2 in mid lane.
Chronic teleports back. There is still pressure on that left side Phoenix, though, something to keep an eye on. The one thing about this draft for Cyclone is even if they weren't this far ahead, 10k at 23 minutes, they would be great at sieging structures. Now that they are 10k ahead, good luck. I mean, basically the only worry for Cyclone in my mind is empty the crypts. So Cyclone can walk in, make Watson commit the ultimate, and just walk out. Just no reason to fight as soon as Watson uses that ultimate. That should be a pretty much unequivocal backup, and then just go on the next wave, because after that, you kill the structure instantly.
It's just Neil. That responsibility is on Neil and ChronicThe Bros almost entirely, because any sort of initiation from either of them is going to force Watson into wanting to unleash the crypts. He just doesn't have much of any other option, because if he chooses to just absorb all the damage from a full kit combination out of Neil or Chronic, he'll probably end up dying before he gets a chance to even deploy that ultimate to begin with. So it's better in the end for Noxious, for Watson to just throw out that ultimate right away, but then you're stuck with the problem of, if we're forced out of our Outwash, what stops Cyclone from disengaging?
Eribiiax with now as well, really doubling down on his structure damage, and even his regular damage does quite a bit at this point. Really good poke from Watson onto Davey, but NeiI is splitting towards the mid lane. Gets the Phoenix down to about half before he's going to have to get out of Phoenix range. Also stripped the bubble from Mango, so a good sequence there for NeiI. Lost a bit of health, but has Fire Giant regen. As Cyclone is playing this fairly slow, NeiI now starting to lose the trade up against Mango in the 1v1.
I doubt that Mango really wants to keep this one going. However, he's already cleared out the waves in mid, so that's pretty much his only responsibility here. ChronicThe Bros will absorb a couple of these tower shots on the left-hand Phoenix, but Cyclone clearly is having a little bit of difficulties trying to breach the defenses of Noxious now.
I'm surprised. I mean, even with Polynomicon, it really should be as simple as walk in, use an ability, poly-auto. Walk in, use an ability, poly-auto, and try and get it that way. Supernova committed now on this left-hand side as NeiI is up through the Cosmos. He's looking for Hydro on that backside, but a big Typhoon knocks up multiple, and Cyclone are still fighting for the Phoenix. They do get it, but Davies down to 1 HP. Gnome peeled off, but Scarab's Blessing wears off at the wrong time. Gnome able to take him down, and Eribiiax left wanting. Chronic does find Watson on the top side, but Cyclone on the run.
Eribiiax unable to connect that Stellar Burst as well. Goes into the Separate, but a little bit too soon here. Looking for the enhance that could save his life up against Gnome, but when Hydro, Jitsu's to close the gap, there's no chance of survival for this soul. ChronicThe Bros and Switch will manage to bring down this mid Phoenix, though, and that might have just been Cyclone's saving grace.
Getting 2 Phoenixes there, even while losing 3, is a completely worthwhile trade, without a doubt. If you only get 1 Phoenix, it's okay, but it's a bit disappointing, I'd say, with how good the siege is from Cyclone. Watson's siege defense is obviously phenomenal, but NeiI losing the 1v1 up against Mango in mid is really where that, I think, went wrong. At least towards the back end of that engagement, though. Even the half damage, the 50% damage he did to the Phoenix on the first wave that we saw him ended up being very relevant. That's why Chronic and Switch are able to get that Phoenix in the first place.
It did also feel a little bit more dysfunctional from Cyclone in comparison to everything else that they've done in this match so far, because NeiI had the intention of trying to split push the mid lane. I understand that, but when he threw the Cosmos so deep into Noxious's backline, it felt like things got a little bit too chaotic for even Cyclone's liking, and Davey was left by his lonesome. Great recognition as well, by the way, from Mango to blink all the way towards Davey and try to bring down the Ho Yi, because Davey falling was the main reason why those sieges were so difficult.
NeiI in some trouble, but he still has the dash. Hydro already pretty low, as it was Noxious trying to pull Fire Giant, but now it's Cyclone trying to pull them off of it. Gnome has the Somersault Cloud and is able to do good damage to Eribiiax as the entirety of Cyclone turn towards the solo laner. Hydro and Watson both forced back. NeiI's blink doesn't get a whole lot of value, but Xuen body blocks himself and ends up falling because of it. All good intentions, doesn't end up working out for him regardless. Only losing Xuen, not bad, but Noxious almost certain to lose Fire on top of it. Gnome's getting close, and on God, if he steals this with a Jingu Bang, he stole it with a Jingu Bang. On God.
He stole it with the cudgel. He actually stole it with the cudgel. That doesn't even make sense. CycloneGG had everybody on side of that Fire Giant, and Gnome walks up with zero concern. And what's even more surprising is that Cyclone, despite having just lost the Fire Giant, they still want to take a look at this right-hand Phoenix.
Xuen's up in 5. You know when you get that feeling? Like, I could feel that was going to happen. NeiI feeling the pain, courtesy of Reformed Mango, and Noxious now surging forward. Chronic knocked up, as is the entirety of Cyclone, but Gnome immediately gets an arrow to the brain. Davey sends him packing, and maybe that is what Noxious needed to force them back. No, Cyclone, undeterred, continues to surge forward. Supernova pokes out Hydro a bit, but the real focus should be on the Phoenix. Watson joining up, though, means there's no way that's going to happen very easily. Typhoon is charged and finds a couple knockups. Chronic res by Switch, but Davey ends up falling. Switch is going to be next. Chronic's got to use Fatal Strike to get away, but him and Eribiiax are all but dead. just the last hits necessary. Mango gets one. Mango looking for his second, and it's an absolute disaster for CycloneGG.
But why force the Phoenix? Why even be there to begin with after you just lost the Fire Giant? Cyclone have played so well for 27 minutes of this match, aggro, and then it only took 2 to 3 minutes for them to negate everything that they accomplished in the early game, because Noxious, sure, that Titan might be at half health for now, but they'll get every single one of their Phoenixes back. The Titan's going to start regenning. Noxious have more than enough time to push out these fire minions and make everything go back to normal creep waves. And if NeiI isn't careful, he could very well end up getting picked off here, continuing the cycle of staggered death respawn timers for Cyclone.
NeiI is going to take a fight up against Terra and nearly gets punished for it. He does have to use the ultimate. Should consider himself lucky to get hit by that Wind Siphon. In fact, NeiI's going to get some damage off, but Switch was in range. As I mentioned, going into this game, rivals guaranteed. They're going to DreamHack Atlanta. The second place team in Europe is going to either be CycloneGG or Noxious. Whichever team that is comes to America for the placement rounds and has to face off against the top Xbox North American team that isn't auto-qualified. Astral Authority's auto-qualified, so this next matchup is critical between Flashpoint and Armada. And the top team from each PlayStation 4 region. Cyclone could potentially not go because Gnome walked in and Jingu banged away a Fire Giant. It's that serious around that FG. Just the lack of zone and the lack of secure could be enough.
You know, when you have the, you mentioned it as well, because you called it before it panned away that it was going to be the one that stole it from someone calling the Jingu Bang, and I really understand that feeling from you, by the way, because I feel like when you've been playing Smite for long enough, you can just tell when a team is about to drop the ball in an objective.
Yeah. When you can just tell they aren't thinking about it.
Because no one even paid any attention whatsoever to Gnome. They were perfectly content with Gnome walking up to them at the Fire Giant. They thought, there's no way that this Sun Wukong could possibly steal this one away. And I'm still surprised that teams can have that sentiment to begin with when you think about how many games we've casted, and that exact moment has been replicated time and time again, at least once a week, I think.
Yep. It's Smite's a hard game. Sometimes teams make it harder on themselves than it needs to be. Nice double stun there from Xuen. Mango thought about following up, but didn't want to put himself in that much danger. Titan's full for Noxious. Left and mid Phoenix both respawned and both as healthy as they'll get. Xuen takes a bit of poke, but he's got the sustain. Good stun there on the Gnome, followed up by Chronic, and Gnome already down to half HP. Davey really swinging now with this Hou Yi now that he's full build.
Same could be said, though, for Hydro, who's starting to tear away at ChronicThe Bro's health. ChronicThe Bro's, for as much bullying as he did early on, he is not feeling tanky any longer up against this Hachiman.
It's Achilles, man. I wonder, does he have the defense on? Can't quite tell right now with that off-wash. He does. Okay, so he's got the shirt on. Loses movement speed, loses power, but gains protections. And this is definitely the way to go on Achilles. At some point, you need to switch over because it is so... it is a very strong passive in the sense of getting free protections is always a good thing. But it could stand to sell some items. I mean, Glad Shield right now doesn't do you a whole lot of good.
The flashy triple bounce there onto Xuen. I don't even think that Davey was expecting that to connect. You kind of just toss him out at this stage. When it's 34 minutes of climbing, you're free to poke as much as possible. Usually a little bit better when you have the brawlers on Hou Yi, but Titan's a very understandable pickup here. Davey just looking to shred through the tanks, not super concerned about the self-sustain from Noxious.
NeiI, again, trying to split push down mid, and again, just not a whole lot doing there for him. Achilles and Ratatoskr are sitting there. They're early game gods. They're early game gods, and we're 34 minutes in. Game's not getting any shorter. You're not losing XP anytime soon. So these two picks are just losing effectiveness the longer this goes.
ChronicThe Bro is going to get stunned out first. Nice Tiger transformation there from Gnome. 2 pulls in off that Wind Siphon, but that's also going to aggro the Fire Giant. Hydro takes down ChronicThe Bros in an instant, and now Davey could be next to fall.
Davey's got to use the Aegis Switch, waiting on that Scarab's Blessing, but Eribiiax takes down Hydro first off. Now Switch is still looking at Davey, who can run back into the Empty the Crypts to get himself some health back, and that's exactly what he does. Good heads-up play. Watson, though, chasing down Eribiiax on that right-hand side as Davey's trying to get some lifesteal. Eribiiax gets soloed down by Watson, who is still full HP on this Opwash.
There's no running away from an Opwash this lane to the Magi aggro. You are just slowed to all hell by Watson. Noxious now with the 4-man advantage in comparison to Cyclone's 3. They're going to look to take down the T2 tower here on the right-hand side. They've got Reform Mango pushing down the creep waves in mid as well. Almost want to see Mango possibly even look to split push another T2, but he will be met head-on with Davey if he keeps shoving down this mid lane, so he'll end up falling back for the rest of his team to group up as Noxious take a look towards this Fire Giant.
No Hydro, so it will take them a little bit. Davey on the way. Gnome doing what should have been done to him. Zoning. 2-man knock-up, Switch getting closer, but here comes NeiI. Can't zone this away. Zwen getting low, gets silenced by the Achilles. As Fire Giant still fairly healthy. NeiI not so much. He falls to Mango, and the Fire Giant still standing. Davey standing there auto-attacking. Fire Giant getting low again. Gnome able to secure it once again, this time with the Master's Will. And Cyclone lose another objective. Mango tosses out Typhoon. That'll knock out Chronic. And now Mango get a dash forward looking for a little bit more. Chronic gets res beautifully by Switch. But whether it was Gnome or Watson, all I know is that Noxious has another fire.
Watson got those corpses just in the nick of time there. The corpse explosion could not have been more perfect for Noxious as they confirm the Fire Giant yet again. And Davey, I understand it entirely. You see the Fire Giant, 10, 20% threshold. You want to keep it going. But they just lost sight of Watson there, and they were not expecting that corpse explosion damage so suddenly.
So now it's Noxious in the driver's seat. I mean, this game is no longer close or even with Noxious, you know, coming up behind. Noxious is in the lead right now. Who cares about gold? We're in 3K potion territory. No one cares about experience. Everyone's level 20. And right now, Enhanced Fire Giant is the separator. No towers left standing. And Noxious are in a position where they can win this game and potentially send themselves to LAN as a result. I mean, this is... In knowing what's at stake here, I think makes this game that much more difficult for Cyclone to lose that Fire Giant and understand that they lost a almost gift-wrapped victory. Not gift-wrapped, but they had earned it, but a game they had in the palm of their hand. And once that gets in your head, it's very difficult to stay focused.
You start to autopilot a little bit. You do lose sight of what's in front of you, and you start thinking about what's the next step. And Noxious, though, they're going to take full advantage of what's right in front of them, and that's trying to siege down this right side Phoenix. ChronicThe Bros already getting chunked out of a decent amount of his HP. Nice 3-man knocker from that through the Cosmos out of NeiI, but it just feels like there's been no damage done.
Eribiiax so low. He still got his Aegis, and Switch actually committed that Scarab's Blessing to Eribiiax, who's already out. Chronic's got to use his ultimate to disengage as Gnome, his clone, is just doing great work right in front of Davey. As the right side Phoenix falls for Noxious, empty the crypts. Too good. It's zoning away the opposition.
And normally the loss of a Fire Giant would not be this heavily felt had it not been the measures that Cyclone took after the fact to make sure it was noticed.
Exactly. The push of the right side Phoenix is really where this game... The Fire Giant is the beginning of the end, and then that right side Phoenix push is really where the straw that broke the camel's back. As Noxious going to try again. No ultimates for them right now, though solid CDR from Watson means Empty the Crypts is going to be up sooner rather than later. NeiI going to have his ultimate up first, though. Through the Cosmos, did some decent work on that right side Phoenix siege, but clearly not enough. Noxious bearing down, looking to put themselves in a position to go to land. Mid-Phoenix now under siege, but Gnome is plucked back. Mantle of Discord stun is right on time. That gets him up into that somersault cloud. NeiI's ultimate did next to nothing, it looks like, on that backside. Mango is low, but still able to join these fights. Davey receives the Scarab's blessing, but ChronicThe is the one who could really use it. Hydro puts him down from up atop the horse. Mid-Phoenix down to half. And Noxious poised to take it, but NeiI blinks in. Big damage from Eribiiax. And all of a sudden, Noxious has got to get on the run. Davey knocks down Watson. And Xuen and Mango now left for their own devices. Great damage coming out of Davey off that pluck from Switch. Mid-Phoenix stays up and standing. Noxious only get one.
It could have been a lot cleaner there from Noxious. They spread apart just a little bit too much from each other. I think they lost track of things, getting too distracted by wanting to go for kills as opposed to the objective. As soon as they found that pick onto ChronicThe Bros, it should have just been a full commitment onto the Phoenix from that point forward, because even if you lose a member or two, they're probably going to end up falling either way, but at the very least, you'd have two Phoenixes in comparison to just the one right now that Cyclone can still reasonably defend here. And I also have to heavily credit Switch for that target prioritization. Scare's blessing on Davey, infinitely more important, I think, than saving the life of the solo lane Achilles. When it's this late into the match, you're going to need that Hunter damage more so than just another body pillow for Noxious to beat up on.
Now Noxious, not quite as in the lead as before. They got the easiest Phoenix to defend. They decided to push down right, and therefore get the least valuable Phoenix. Makes it fairly easy for Cyclone to defend this right side and the Fire Giant simultaneously. 3 fires rather have gone down. This will be the 4th, if any team even needs it. Switch and the rest of Cyclone clearly undeterred. They'll pull it. Mango's backing, and he actually finishes it. So Mango won't be here. Here's Gnome. ChronicThe, no deep zone. Instead, lets Gnome get right up on top. Fire Giant getting low once again. And Noxious, are you kidding me? Jingu Bang gets it again from Gnome. It's gotta be unbelievable. Cyclone can't buy a Fire Giant, and Noxious kill NeiI in the process.
This has got to be heartbreaking at some point or another, Aggro. The fact that Noxious has not only outconfirmed Cyclone twice because of Gnome on this some Wukong, but a third time, right? Just for good measure. I think that time was actually him again with the Jingu Bang. I did not see a corpse explosion in time there from Watson. It looked as though Gnome had the credits.
How do you let him walk into the pit when he's stolen it from you twice? I don't understand. I don't understand. And this is to go to land. And you got a zone when you're at land. So if you're not going to learn it here, then you might not go. Mid-Phoenix again. The attempt from Noxious. This time they will be successful. Right Phoenix respawned and died instantly off of their siege. And now they'll look for this left side Phoenix.
The only benefit that Cyclone have to their names right now is the fact that somebody pushed out the left-hand lane, so that the creep waves are pretty far up there, and Noxious are going to have to spend a little bit of time to go and get them. Reform Mango going to be quick on his feet for that one, and take them down in no time at all, bringing the creep waves back into Noxious's favor. There is only one Phoenix left standing here for Cyclone. NeiI was just dead for so long. 70-second respawn timers and climbing at this point. So even one pick could very well be the end of the game.
On the other hand, if Cyclone manages to wipe Noxious, they can run it down mid and end this game. So Cyclone not out of it yet. As long as there's not a Fire Giant involved, they should be good. Good poke from the double ricochet from Davey. Hits 2. Left side Phoenix takes a lot of damage right off the bat. Hydro's hitting pretty hard at this point, as you would expect. Gnome pretty isolated, deep on the enemy side, but he's got Somersault Cloud. Knockup only hits onto Hydro, and NeiI immediately disrupted and brought very low. That an archery shot was homing from Hydro. He gets it done and gets the kill. Third Phoenix falls. NeiI again, 60+ seconds, and Noxious looking to punch their ticket. Titan already down to half. Noxious lose their Hunter right away. Hydro goes down, but the Titan does as well. Noxious battle back Took them 3 FGs, but they get it done. They beat Cyclone in 44 minutes.
The fact that Noxious get 3 Fire Giants in the first place, though, all comes back to that very first failed Fire Giant steal. And Cyclone, for as well as they played this game, for the first 25, 27 minutes, all of that just quickly washed away from multiple just bad choices.
Finch and I were talking about it before this day started. The cliche that people say, it's a cliche that you don't know how to end the game, it's real. And Cyclone didn't know how to end the game. They let Gnome walk in, take up a Fire Giants from him. Who's the MVP? It's Gnome. Don't even vote. Just show us Fire Giant steals. Let's go. There's nothing else that could happen right there. Cyclone lose an absolute heartbreaker, and for some, and they just can't close it out. They were in complete control. They were up 10K with 2 Phoenixes down and the Titan at half, and they lose.
It was just, I can forgive Gnome stealing away the first Fire Giant. I don't think that Noxious even end up in that position afterwards, though, unless Cyclone were so stubborn and decide to fully deicide themselves, essentially, by running at a 5-man strong Fire Giant team. Well, excuse me, 4-man strong, because Gwen did die in the process there before that Fire Giant was stolen away, but still, why would you charge to try and pressure out a right-hand Phoenix? Just accept that you aren't going to be able, they're going to get their Phoenixes back, the mid and left-hand side, and then you leave it at that. You look to re-engage after the Fire Giant is worn off because you know that Noxious aren't going to want to push up and try to aggress into you actively. There's no good reason for them to do that when they can just buy all the time in the world chilling at their base with that FG. And it just, I'm just so speechless for the decision-making that took place for Cyclone to continue trying to pressure out Noxious, because their composition was not intended for the late game. This was a game that should have been closed out by the 30-minute mark had they played their cards correctly.
Man, that is absolutely brutal. That is absolutely insane. I'm pretty sure Gnome got all 3. I actually think he got all 3. That is absolutely absurd. Gnome wins the game for Noxious. The rest of the team did well, of course, but Cyclone gifting it away. I can't even imagine losing a game like that, man. That is tough.
When they come to land, they can buy them a nice steak dinner.
Yes, seriously. Head over to Firebirds, because that's where everyone goes for land anyways, and you owe it to Gnome after that game. And that's a critical one. And we've got another critical one coming up. North America, it's Armada versus Flashpoint. Both these teams locked at 2-2. The second place team will come to the placements. The third place team will be complaining on Twitter. So we'll see which team ends up coming to land right after this quick break.